It was late fall of 2022, just as the night started getting colder and darker way too early. I was 17 at the time, living in a small town called Elmridge, about 2 hours from anything remotely exciting. After our parents passed a few years ago, my older sister, Mia, took custody of me and my two little brothers, Jeremy and Caleb. She was only 26, barely holding it together with a full-time job and raising 3 kids, including a cranky teenage me. We weren't rich, not even close, so every penny counted. Mia was big on clipping coupons and chasing sales. Our go-to grocery store was a dingy old place called Dalton's Market right off Main Street. It wasn't big, it wasn't fancy, and it definitely wasn't well lit, but it was cheap, and that's all we cared about. That Thursday night, Mia was too exhausted from her shift to run errands, so I offered to do the grocery run. Honestly, I just wanted an excuse to get out of the house. The kids were fighting over a broken remote. The Wi-Fi was acting up, and the heat made everything feel sticky. I figured a late-night trip to Dalton's might actually feel peaceful. The store closed at 10, and I didn't head out until 9:15. By the time I pulled into the near-empty parking lot, the sky was pitch black. A single yellow light flickered above the entrance like it was trying to die. The inside of the store was even weirder at night, quiet in that dead kind of way. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. A distant hum came from the old refrigerators. It felt like I had stepped into a place time forgot. I grabbed a squeaky-wheeled cart and started doing laps around the aisles. No music, no chatter, just the sound of my shoes and the occasional crack of something shifting on the shelves. I was halfway through my list when I hit the cereal aisle, and that's when it happened. I felt a tap on my shoulder. Not gentle, firm, like someone trying to get my attention without saying a word. I spun around fast. There was a man standing there, maybe mid-30s, kind of average height, skinny but not frail. He wore a faded red hoodie, the zipper halfway undone, revealing a stained gray shirt underneath. His jeans were baggy and scuffed at the bottom. On his head was a dark baseball cap pulled low over his eyes. His skin was pale, too pale, and his lips were dry and cracked like he hadn't had water in days. "Sorry," he said, smiling in a way that didn't reach his eyes. "Didn't mean to scare you. Just looking for those chips. The ones in your cart." I looked down. He was pointing at a random bag of off-brand cheddar chips I grabbed because they were on sale. "Oh, these?" I asked. "Yeah," he nodded. "I've been looking all over." "Where'd you find them?" His voice was raspy, too smooth, almost rehearsed. Something about the way he talked felt off. Aisle 5, right by the crackers," I said, trying to be polite. "Really?" he said, glancing back. "I just checked there. Didn't see any. I mean, I just got them like 5 minutes ago." He stared at me for a second too long. Then he smiled again. His teeth were yellow and something was stuck in one of them. Popcorn, maybe? Or just no, it was darker. "Well," he said, "mind showing me where?" Part of me wanted to say no, but I was raised to be polite, so I nodded and led him back down the aisle. He followed close, too close. I could hear his breathing behind me, fast and shallow. I pointed to the chips and he leaned in, way into my personal space. "Thanks," he muttered. I nodded and turned to walk away, but he followed. "Crazy how they stopped making the regular kind," he said. "These ones are all right. But the original ones? Man, could eat those all day. They used to come in this big bag with that silver logo. You know the one?" I didn't. I gave a half-hearted, "Yeah, I think so," and tried to steer my cart away. "You shop here a lot?" he asked. I ignored the question. He kept going. "Usually don't see people this late. Not many come here after dark. Weird, huh?" I finally stopped and turned to him. "Sorry, I'm just trying to finish up before they close," I said, keeping my voice friendly but firm. He blinked slowly. "Right, makes sense." Then he smiled again, wider this time. His lips cracked slightly at the corners. "You're really pretty, you know that?" My stomach dropped. I didn't say anything, just turned and walked away. He didn't follow immediately, but I kept catching him in my peripheral vision as I moved through the aisles. One moment he'd be at the dairy section, pretending to look at milk. Then I'd turn the corner and boom, he'd be right there by the bread staring at me. Every time I looked up, he was closer, never buying anything, just watching. My hands were shaking by the time I reached the checkout. I unloaded my cart fast, eyes darting around. Then I saw him again. He stepped into line behind me, holding a bottle of soda and a candy bar. He didn't say a word, but I could feel his eyes on me. Heavy, unblinking. When I paid and started pushing my cart out, he said quietly, "Have a good night, sweetheart." I didn't answer. Outside, the parking lot was even darker than before. I rushed to my car, heart pounding. As I loaded the bags into the trunk, I spotted him again, walking slowly toward an old, beat-up car. It was a gray Honda, rust eating through the sides. One headlight was out. He got in, but the engine didn't start. He just sat there, watching. I slammed the trunk, jumped in the driver's seat, and took off. I checked my mirrors over and over. No headlights behind me. No sign of the car. I exhaled when I got home. Maybe I was being paranoid. Just a weird guy, harmless. But when I pulled into our driveway, something didn't feel right. I glanced down the road. There it was. That same gray Honda. No lights. Crawling slowly past our house, it didn't stop. Just kept rolling down the street. I ran inside and locked the door. "Mia," I shouted. She came downstairs, panicked. There was this guy from the store. I think he followed me home. She rushed outside, but the car was gone. We called the police, filed a report, but without a plate number, there wasn't much they could do. We tried to forget it, tried to move on. Then 3 nights later, it happened again. We were all in bed. The house was quiet, too quiet. Then we heard it, tap, tap, tap. It came from the side of the house, not loud, almost curious. Mia grabbed the baseball bat from under the bed and motioned for me to stay behind her. She crept to the window and peeked out. There was someone standing by the gate to the backyard, just standing, not moving. His head was tilted upward like he was listening to something. Then he tried the latch. It rattled once, twice. Mia yanked the window open. "Hey!" The man jerked his head up. And in the dim light from our kitchen window, we saw his face. It was him. Same red hoodie, same hat. Same pale skin. He froze for a moment, then ran. Mia flew down the stairs with the bat and burst out the front door. I watched from the window as she chased after him barefoot. She didn't catch him, but she did see the car. Same gray Honda, peeling paint. Flickering taillight, peeling off into the dark. After that night, we installed cameras. Motion lights. Got the locks changed. The police came again, but like before, there wasn't much they could do. We never saw him again. But sometimes, when I'm walking home from the bus stop or bringing in the trash late at night, I get this feeling like I'm being watched. Sometimes, I hear a car slow roll past our house after midnight, and every time I see a red hoodie in a crowd, even for just a second, my heart stops. Some people say the scariest monsters are the ones in your head, but I know better. Sometimes, they shop at your grocery store, and sometimes they follow you home. Okay, so this happened back in 2017, when I was 19 and working part-time at a place called Harrow's Market. It's one of those big 24-hour grocery stores in a sleepy town called Millfield. Small, enough that everyone knows your business, but just big enough for weird stuff to slip through the cracks. I was living at home and going to community college nearby, so I picked up shifts whenever I could. I worked mostly in the evenings, sometimes weekends, never nights. I made that clear when I started. I needed time to study, and also night shifts just seemed off, you know? Like the kind of time when only raccoons, truckers, and sketchy people are awake. But then one week, I noticed my name on the schedule for Tuesday night, midnight to 8 a.m. I stared at it for a long time, thinking maybe I was seeing it wrong. I even blinked a few times like that would change anything. I went to ask my supervisor, Janice, what was going on. She was the kind of manager who didn't look up from her clipboard unless something was on fire. She just said, "You're over 18, Casey, you can handle a night." I almost told her to shove it. But rent was due, my car needed gas, and textbooks weren't going to pay for themselves. So I figured I'd suck it up, just one night. One and done. Midnight rolled around. I showed up with a giant thermos of coffee and a stomach full of dread. My coworker Riley was just clocking out when I arrived. "Good luck," she muttered. "Nights here get weird." I laughed like it was a joke, but something in her eyes told me she wasn't kidding. The store was dim, half the lights turned off to save power, but it mostly just made the place feel creepy. Shadows pooled in the corners. A few night owls shuffled around with their carts, buying milk or diapers or whatever people need at 1 a.m. After a while, even they disappeared. By 2 a.m., the store was dead silent. I stood behind the front register, trying to keep myself awake, tapping my fingers on the counter. It was that kind of stillness that makes every little sound feel louder than it should. My ears started picking up things, like the hum of the freezer, the buzz of one flickering ceiling light, and footsteps, slow ones. I looked up and saw a bald man walking down the main aisle. He looked like he was in his 40s, wearing khakis and a dark blue hoodie. On his belt was a ring of keys that jingled softly with each step, and he was carrying a little black backpack in his hand. He gave me a small nod as he passed the front, then circled back around a few minutes later. And then again, always just slow walking by the register, not buying anything, just walking. I figured he was a manager doing some kind of check. I mean, who else walks around like they own the place? "Hey," I called out, trying to sound casual. "Are you the night manager?" He turned and walked up to the counter, stopping just short of it. His face was expressionless, like he'd forgotten how to smile. "First night?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, trying to keep it light. "Guess I got volunteered." He nodded, then held out a hand. I shook it, even though something about it felt off. Cold. Damp, maybe. Then he said, "Can you head back to the storage room? Organize the pallets. I'll keep an eye on the front." I didn't really know what organize the pallets meant, but I didn't want to look clueless, so I just said, "Sure," and headed to the back. But as I walked away, I caught a glimpse of him near the main entrance, reaching toward a little panel beside the door. His hand hovered there for a second, like he was pressing something. Locking it? That gave me pause. Why would a manager lock the doors in the middle of a shift? I pushed into the back storage room, and that's when I saw someone else. Tall, younger than the other guy, maybe early 30s, wearing a Harrow's Market vest that said Night Supervisor Marcus. He looked up from his clipboard when he saw me and smiled. "Hey, you must be Casey. First night?" "Yeah," I said, laughing nervously. I thought the other guy was the manager. "Bald guy, kinda quiet?" Marcus tilted his head. "Other guy?" I described him. The hoodie, the keys, the backpack. Marcus frowned. "I'm the only supervisor on tonight." And right then all the lights in the store went out. A deep, thick silence dropped over everything. The only light came from the dim blue glow of the cooler units. It was like being underwater. Marcus's face tensed. "Wait here," he said quickly. "I'm gonna check it out." He disappeared through the swinging doors into the dark store. I stood there alone, the silence pressing in from every side. I climbed onto a stack of boxes and pulled out my phone to text my friend Jordan. "Bro, lights just went out. Guy acting weird. Not even sure he works here." No reply. Just then I heard a door creak open. Not the one Marcus went through. One on the far side of the warehouse, the one near the emergency exit. My heart jumped. I held my breath, footsteps slow, dragging. A voice followed, low, gravelly. "Hey kid, you back here?" It wasn't Marcus, it was him, the bald guy. And he sounded closer than he should have been. I didn't think. I just moved. I slipped off the boxes, ducked low, and tiptoed through the other exit back into the store. The place was pitch black, except for the pale cooler lights casting long, eerie shadows across the aisles. Every step I took echoed way too loud. I called out in a whisper, "Marcus?" No answer. I jogged up to the front doors and reached for the handle. They didn't budge. I tried the manual latch. Locked. Panic started to crawl up my spine. I turned around, and just as I did, footsteps behind me. Fast, I spun, heart pounding, and there was Marcus. He looked just as freaked out as I was. He ran up to the door, flipped a latch hidden near the top, and it clicked. "Go," he whispered. "Now." We pushed out into the night air, and the cool breeze hit me like a wave. I gulped it in. Marcus was already dialing his phone. I stood there shaking as I heard him talking to 911. "Yes, I think there's an intruder in the store," he said. "Might be armed." "Lock the doors. Cut the lights," he paused. And my coworker thinks he was trying to lure them into the back. He glanced at me. "You okay?" I nodded, barely. He told me to wait in my car. I got in, locked the doors, and just stared at the entrance of the store. A few minutes later, 4 police cruisers pulled in, lights flashing. They rushed inside. I didn't wait around to see what happened. I drove home, eyes darting to every shadow on the way. The next day, I went back in for a shift and got the full story. The security footage showed the bald man circling the aisles, looking around corners like he was checking if anyone was watching. At one point, he slipped behind the service desk and hit a switch that locked the front doors. Then he went to the circuit box and flipped off the main lights. After that, he walked straight into the warehouse, right where he told me to go. And here's the creepiest part. He never went back out through the store. The last thing the cameras caught was him slipping through the emergency exit at the very back of the building, which didn't have any alarms because of a malfunction that still hadn't been fixed. They never found out who he was. No name, no employee record. No one recognized him. And that backpack he carried? It was found in the store later. Inside was a pair of gloves, a screwdriver, a flashlight, and zip ties. I never worked a night shift again after that. Stayed at Harrow's Market for a few more months, but only in daylight. Some nights, though, when I can't sleep, I still hear his voice. "Hey kid, you back here?" And I wonder what would have happened if I'd answered. Let me tell you about something that happened to me a few years back. I don't share this story often, mostly because people either laugh or get uncomfortable. But since it's late and we're just talking, why not? So back in 2019, I was working the night shift at this grocery store called Pine Valley Market, small town place in Vermont. The kind where everyone knows everyone and nothing exciting ever really happens, except for that one night. I was 24 at the time, just trying to pay off some student loans. The night shift wasn't glamorous, but it was quiet, and I liked being left alone to do my thing. The store closed at 10 p.m. and I'd work from then until about 3 in the morning, restocking shelves and cleaning up the aisles. Just me and one other person on the shift. That night it was supposed to be me and Jake, a buddy of mine who'd been working there even longer than I had. I showed up around 9:55, unlocked the back door with my key, and headed into the dimly lit stockroom. That part of the store always gave off weird vibes. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead, and the place smelled like old cardboard and spilled detergent. I propped the back door open with the usual heavy rubber stopper so Jake could just walk in when he got there. First task of the night, restock the bread and snack aisle. So I loaded up a pallet with boxes of hamburger buns, granola bars, and those weird snack cakes nobody actually buys. I was halfway through rotating the loaves, old ones to the front, new ones in the back, when I realized I hadn't seen or heard Jake at all. Figured he was just running late. No big deal. But after about 30 more minutes, I started getting this weird feeling. Not scared exactly, just uneasy. Like when you walk into a room and you know someone's been there, even if they're gone now. I went back to the stockroom to check if Jake's stuff was there. Sometimes he left his hoodie or phone on the table, but the room was empty. What caught my attention, though, was the back door. It was closed. Now that was strange. I'd left it wide open with the stopper wedged underneath. But now the stopper was just lying outside on the loading dock, like someone had kicked it out. The air in the room felt colder suddenly, like a window had been left open somewhere. I called out, "Jake?" Nothing. At that point, I figured maybe he'd come in, shut the door behind him, and was messing around somewhere in the store. But something wasn't sitting right, so I called him. He picked up after a few rings, his voice groggy like he'd just woken up. "Dude," I asked, "you coming in or what?" He goes, "Nah, man." I called out, "Didn't they tell you? I've got the flu." That's when my stomach dropped. I told him someone had shut the back door and moved the stopper. He just mumbled something like, maybe it slipped, and told me to be safe. We hung up, but I knew it hadn't just slipped. I jammed it under there tight. You could have kicked that thing and it wouldn't budge unless you really meant to move it. Still trying to keep calm, I walked the perimeter of the store, just doing a once-over. All the lights were off except for the ones in the bread aisle. Everything was quiet, too quiet. No music, no air conditioning hum, No distant car sounds from the highway, just silence and that awful buzzing from the flickering lights. And then I heard it. A sharp clang, like something metallic falling, echoed from somewhere near the frozen foods. It wasn't loud, but it cut through the silence like a knife. My heart started racing. I walked toward the center of the store, where all the aisles intersected, and just stood there. That's when I saw him. At the far end of the dairy aisle, a man in all black walked across the intersection, glancing straight at me as he passed. He didn't run. He didn't sneak. He just walked like he had every right to be there. But something about the way he moved, it wasn't right. Too smooth, too slow, like he wanted me to see him. I froze. It reminded me of that scene in Signs where the alien walks past the birthday party on camera. Except this wasn't a movie. This was real, and I was alone. I tried to think logically. Maybe he was a temp worker I didn't know about. Maybe the boss sent someone else last minute. So I started walking down the main aisle, calling out, "Hey, excuse me." No answer. I peeked down every aisle as I passed until finally I spotted him again, standing at the end of the cereal aisle, just staring. Arms by his sides, not moving. His face was pale and his mouth was slightly open, like he'd forgotten how to close it. I shouted, "Hey, who are you?" and started walking faster. He turned and slowly stepped out of sight again, heading back the way I came. I jogged up to the front near the cash registers and looked down the bread aisle. There he was again, but now he was half hidden behind a shelf. His head leaned out at a weird angle and he was waving at me, but not like a normal wave. His hand moved slowly, almost rhythmically, like he was swaying it back and forth to a beat I couldn't hear. His face still blank, still that slack-jawed, dead-eyed expression. I yelled again. Nothing. He just slid behind the shelf and vanished. That was it. I walked straight out the front doors and into the parking lot, sat in my car and locked the doors. I called my manager, explained what was going on, and he told me to try to get the guy out, or call the cops. "Nope," I said. "Not doing that." So I called the police. A patrol car pulled in about 10 minutes later. I flagged the officer down and let him inside. As soon as we stepped in, I felt it again, that drop in temperature. The air felt heavy. The lights buzzed louder than before, and one of them in aisle 6 was flickering fast like a strobe. We walked slowly, checking each aisle. And there he was, same guy, same black clothes, standing at the end of the canned foods aisle. Just standing there like he was waiting for us. The officer called out, "Sir, can you come over here, please?" To my surprise, the guy obeyed. He walked toward us, still with that empty stare. No resistance. No words. The officer cuffed him and started walking him out, but as he passed me, the man turned his head and smiled. It wasn't a regular smile. It was wide, too wide, like he was trying to stretch his lips around his face. He never blinked. Just stared right at me and slowly licked his lips. I felt sick to my stomach. The officer asked him what he was doing in the store, and the guy finally spoke. His voice was raspy, like he hadn't used it in years. He said, "I was just looking for a snack." That was it. That's all he said. I never saw him again. The police didn't give me any updates. I finished my shift that night, but not a minute passed where I didn't feel like someone was watching me from behind a shelf. From then on, I made sure every single door was locked tight the moment I got in. I never left that back door open again, not even for a minute, and every once in a while, when I'm walking down an empty aisle late at night, whether it's at a store or just in my own house, I get that same feeling. Like someone's still watching, waiting.